Peter Carter here. Now, what I'm covering today isn't normally something we cover on Midnight Movie Cult, but it is something that we're going to start covering weekly for now anyway, just because it's so damn awesome. We're going to start talking about House of the Dragon. Now, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. TJ is as well, along with all of us members of the Midnight Movie Cult. So, essentially, it is a great enough series to where we just can't ignore it. It has everything. If you haven't watched the entire Game of Thrones series, go ahead and do so. And if you haven't watched this week's episode 1, House of the Dragon, stop now, go watch it, and come back. Okay, now that you've watched it, we're going to talk about this. Now, I loved how this entire show started. First thing, it goes straight into a cold opening. There is no intro. There's no opening credits. Straight into the cold opening. Straight into the episode. We don't even get an intro the entire time, which is crazy. I don't think the entire series of Game of Thrones has done that. So, we sit here watching, and it opens up with the history of what is going on to catch us up. This is all taking place 178 years prior to Robert's Rebellion, which starts off the Game of Thrones series. So we're back in time where the Targaryens are in charge, and we're showing they're having a giant meeting at Harrenhal, where hundreds of lords have gathered to decide the new heir, because the current king had left no direct heir, so it is put upon him to vote, and they show that the heir is Viserys. Now, Viserys 1, not to be confused with Viserys from the original Game of Thrones series. So, this is King Viserys the First. Then we go forward a good 13, 14 years, I do believe, and we see that he has produced no male heir. He has a daughter. The princess is just lovely. And his wife is currently pregnant with an expecting child. Meanwhile, his brother, Daemon Targaryen, has been put in charge of the city guard. During this episode, we get to see Daemon Targaryen first. He's in charge of the Gold Cloaks, the city guard, essentially the police for the capital city. Has an army unto himself of 2,000 people, and goes out and starts rounding up all scum and villainy within this entire within the city. And there's no trial, there's no jurisprudence, there's nothing. This man goes ahead and starts executing people right and left. He starts taking hands, he starts taking heads. This guy honestly has a bloodlust, which is very in line with the Targaryen madness that occurs. And you see a division also in this episode, the Small Council, with Sir Otto Hightower, Lord Otto Hightower, as the Hand of the King, advising Viserys the First that, your brother's really whacked. He is not right. He has a bloodlust. He's uncontrollable. He's undisciplined. Yada, yada, yada. And Viserys is sitting there going, he stole my brother. He stole my brother. Anyway, so there's a tournament being held, to where they're just holding the tournament because the queen is about to give birth, and they're hoping for a male heir. They think it's, the king obviously wants to be male heir. Meanwhile, the princess has spent this episode alluding like she just wants to ride dragons and be a warrior. She doesn't really care about a princess, and it's very Arya Stark-like in her presence. Meanwhile, during this tournament, they show, Daemon Targaryen enters, and you can already see, like, his first battle, he knows he's going to lose, so what does he do? He gives a cheap shot to the knight he's facing, takes out the guy's horse instead of the man, and continues to advance and during the tournament. But the queen starts giving birth during this. Now, this is really important. This was an important juxtaposition, showing how the battle for women giving childbirth is akin to the battle that these men are facing. So, we have this awesome duality going on throughout the entire thing. Unfortunately, the Maesters go to the king and be like, listen, that child is breached. We've tried everything. Either she is going to die and your child is going to die, or you can try to save the child. And he makes the executive decision. We're going to save your child. So he has her held down without her knowledge. Like, listen, we're cutting you open. Sorry. I love you, but sorry. We're going to try to save the child because I'm losing. I can either lose both of you or I can rescue my kid. So they do a medieval C-section, pull the kid. Meanwhile, we've seen the juxtaposition with Daemon in the tournament, and he ends up losing to a knight from Dorne in the final bout, which was fantastic. A great fight. The cinematography was great. The action, the fight sequences, all choreographed perfectly. And we didn't have that nasty jump cut that was going on with modern movies where you just chop, 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 chop. Where it actually broken up, look beautiful. That's an up for me. Unfortunately, the queen dies because, they just cut her open, took a child out of her. The baby, who was a male, everything that he wanted, dies a day later. So, and the poor princess loses her mother, her brother in the same day. The king is distraught. They show the funeral pyre, and the king can't even speak. And meanwhile, this was the key thing. Daemon's the only one who acts normal during the entire thing. He's completely like the king has shut himself down. The princess is obviously mourning, but Daemon reaches to the princess. This is your time. You have to do this. This is up to you now. So she looks up. She calls her dragon down from the hillside, which was excellent. Big golden dragon comes down, just hits Dracarys, and the dragon starts the funeral pyre, as in the fashion of the Targaryens. In the meantime, Daemon goes and gets drunk at a brothel, and there's all sorts of sex going on. All of his men are having a good time, and his men are cheering him on like, hey, you're still the heir to the throne, yeah, you're the only male heir, yay. And drunken Daemon slips up and says, he gives a cheer to him being still the heir to the throne, refers to his, dead nephew as the king for a day. Well, this gets word back to the king's hand, who turns to the king, says, this is what your brother said. So the king calls him to court, and you see the king sitting on top of the Iron Throne. Now, the depiction of the Iron Throne in this was much more book accurate than what was originally predicted in the Game of Thrones series. You see all the swords, like a cascade of swords. Now, if it's never been brought up, those swords are all melted swords from the conquest of Aegon I, who took over Westeros, and he melted all of his enemy swords and made the throne. The throne is very uncomfortable and sharp to remind who's ever sitting on them that this is not a joke. You were not supposed to be comfortable in the seat. You were supposed to be reminded of how we got here and why this is painful to sit here. So, the king's, asked his brother, was this true? And he's like, listen, we all mourn our own way. And the king just says, I've had enough of you, brother. I want you to go back to the Vale, where he has a betrothed wife, and he is Lord of the Vale, which, if you all remember, the Vale is up northeast in the middle of freaking nowhere. It's out in the middle. It pretty much almost exiling his brother without actually exiling him. He'll live in comfort, sure, and be surrounded by sheep and nothing, except, the Vale. So, his brother says, I'm here to protect you from yourself. You're weak. And he takes a step forward, and you see the actual Kingsguard, the step forward, and King says, one more step and you're losing your head. So, Daemon takes off, turns around, boots. The king has decided to name the princess the heir, the first female to ever sit on the Iron Throne to be named heir. He confides in her, you're the first female, you're all I've got. And he also gives her a warning, first king had a great vision, the end times. He had a vision of events to come, and a cold darkness coming from the north to kill everyone, yada, yada. And, he's obviously referencing the events that happened in Game of Thrones. He even says, he called this vision a vision of Ice and Fire, which is the title, the title of the book series that Martin wrote. So then we go to another juxtaposition, another transcendent. We're seeing, meanwhile, the princess is getting crowned as the heir and being announced to the kingdom, and all the lords gathered. We see all the lords, pledging fealty to the king and his heir. We also see Daemon packing up, getting on his dragon, and hightailing out of town. Now, this obviously isn't going to be the last we're seeing Daemon. He's too important of a character. He is way too integral to this part. And this is a guy who, in a 2 years' time, took the City Watch from nothing to 2,000 strong soldiers completely loyal to him. So he's plotting something, and this is going to get very interesting. But God, it was so good to be back in Westeros with a new series. It was so good to feel this way again. We still had the same score that they used for dun 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 dun. It was beautiful. The acting was superb. HBO spent no expense in making this episode. Obviously, the costumes and sets were on point. The special effects were all great. Didn't notice anything bad. And I believe a lot of those were some really good practical effects, which, as you know, if you're a member of the Midnight Movie Cult, you better be a fan of practical effects, or else we'll revoke your membership. Right? And I understand this video is a little unorganized. It was a little unplanned. I just gotten together with the other cult leaders the other day. We decided we need to start reviewing this, and I want to do it quick and dirty next week. I'll have episode 2. It'll be a lot better, a lot more organized, I promise you. But keep watching. We're going to keep churning out videos weekly as we can. Meanwhile, I appreciate you all. Stay safe out there and keep watching Midnight Movies. Until next time.